Hi, welcome to this video about diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations. My name is Daniela Bolzani. I am a senior lecturer at the University of Bologna, Italy, and I am also the scientific leader of the project Mig and Cube, which funds the MOOC that you are taking right now. The word migrant is an umbrella term to include super diverse people with different migration status and different characteristics. Think about how diverse can be refugees, economic migrants, start-uppers, blue card workers, or students in our countries. Europe has always been an important hub for international migration, and the number of migrants in Europe has increased exponentially over the last decades. Ethnic and national diversity is becoming increasingly visible and salient. Have you ever thought about the implications of such demographic changes for your work and for your organization? For instance, have you ever thought that foreigners, but also second generations, are increasingly applying for job positions in entrepreneurial ecosystems, in entrepreneurial support organizations, or investing companies? Many of them could also become highly successful entrepreneurs. Did you know, for instance, that 55% of unicorns in the United States have been founded by a foreign born entrepreneur? Migration can contribute to entrepreneurial landscapes and entrepreneurial support organizations in Europe. This is why we believe that you should get to know more about three key concepts: diversity, equity, and inclusion. I will speak here with respect to these concepts in reference to Western socioeconomic context in the current historical period, because these concepts evolve over time and are perceived as different across different areas of the world. So it's very hard to generalize. We refer to diversity as those individual attributes and characteristics which determine the identity and social positioning of an individual. These characteristics can be visible, so they are called surface level, such as gender, race and ethnicity, nationality, migratory status, disability, or age, or less visible. So they are named also deep level characteristics, such as education or religion. The fact that people is diverse is not an issue per se, but because diverse characteristics generate different relational dynamics in groups, organizations, and society. Many psychological theories can explain this. For instance, according to social identity theory, based on some characteristics, people tend to classify themselves into social categories, which are meaningful for them. For instance, in terms of ethnicity, one can think about himself or herself as black or white. In terms of parental status, one can categorize himself or herself as a mother or a father. Also, in terms of professions, you can classify yourself as a doctor or as a plumber. Categorizing oneself or others can be positive because being a member in a certain social group helps in constructing meaningful identities and also set rules about the way in which individuals interact. However, categorization can also have negative sides. They can generate stereotypical representations of member in a given category. Think about, when we say, oh, all women are women because they're gentle and caring. And this can also lead to making comparisons, often in a psychologically implicit way, between individuals belonging to the same social group or to different groups. For instance, as another stereotype, black men are lazier with respect to white men. Or again, women have lower attitudes towards mathematics than men. Categorizations are also limiting the understanding of the lived experiences of individuals. Because each categorization, for instance, gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, cannot really be separated by other relevant categorizations. According to the intersectional perspective, for instance, the category of women cannot be accounted as a one size fits all homogeneous category to include all the experiences of all women, because different women live very different experiences because of other dimensions of diversity. Therefore, black women live different experiences than white women. Disabled women, lesbian women, elderly women will live very idiosyncratic experiences because of different intersecting identities. The intersection of different characteristics is very important because they recategorize individuals according to social positions and different degrees of power and privilege, or oppression and disadvantage. For example, black women have been systematically impaired in labor market entry and progression with respect to white women. As explained by the theory of social comparisons, categorization can also push people to try conforming to opinions, abilities, and characteristics of the groups that are perceived as preferred in one organization or in society, contributing to the feelings of inclusion or exclusion of members from these social groups. The feelings of exclusion, of course, are painful for individuals who would like to be accepted not only because they are members of some reference social groups, but also because of their characteristics and talents, which are unique. In our societies, diversity is now recognized as a fact and something we can really touch and see, also because of the struggles and social movements brought forward by disadvantaged groups. Just to name a few, think about LGBTQT plus parades or the Afro American movements for civil rights. Take 1 minute and think about your organization or the organizations you work for. To which extent are they diverse? Where is diversity located? At the top level, where decisions are made, or at the operational level? Which can be the consequences of the lack of diversity for your organization? Well, many studies have documented the positive aspects of diversity in organizations in terms of job satisfaction, organizational commitment, access to a diverse customer base, creativity, innovation, problem solving, and also better corporate image. However, many other studies have found insignificant, negative, or conflicting results. For example, with respect to the lack of cohesion, higher turnover, or even lower sales. Considering these results, it can be concluded that the presence of different people in organizations per se does not necessarily lead to benefits in working environments. Diversity can have a positive effect on organizational performance only if it is managed. We speak about diversity management as the set of managerial practices which promote an environment where people bring a variety of backgrounds, styles, perspectives, values, and beliefs as a resource to the teams. What matters here is the concept of inclusion. Inclusion refers to how well all members of an organization connect, participate, can make their voice heard, and experience a sense of belonging. The very important idea here is that diversity without inclusion is not productive, as people are not put in situations where they can contribute and be accepted by dominant groups within organizations. When we speak about inclusion, we need to look at different levels: individual, team, organization, but also society. The individual experience of inclusion is key. Think about your own experience in answering these questions. How much do you feel psychologically and physically safe in your organization? Do you feel involved and engaged in the different activities and work groups? Do you feel as an insider? Do you and people like you feel respected, trusted, and valued? Do your ideas and perspective influence what happens and what decisions are made? Can you truly be yourself in your teams or organization? Or do you need to conceal or distort some parts of your identity, style, ideas, or individual characteristics? Are you treated fairly without discriminations and barriers based on your identities? And do people acknowledge diversity as a source of learning? Beside the individual level, the second key aspect of inclusion is relationality. Inclusive behaviors are based on the recognition that relationships are characterized by dynamics and structures of power. Who takes decisions? Who are the insiders? Who are the outsiders? And who decides who these people are? An inclusive organization is a work environment where no one is favored or disadvantaged, and where the we are all. Everyone has equal rights to participate and to speak, both in defining the values and norms that define success and organizational practices. At the collective level, this means being able to integrate and learn from differences, taking into account the plurality of points of view. And this means listening and dialoguing, recognizing privilege, and cultivating participatory methods. Also, being able to manage conflict. And ultimately, from a moral point of view, it means applying solidarity with other human beings. An inclusive organization is characterized by an environment of respect, justice, and equity. It is transparent and becomes socially responsible through policies and practices, systems and procedures that value differences, sustain inclusion, and make the employees and managers also better citizens who are aware of the societal diversities and inclusion issues. In this regard, let me come to the last and really more politically sensitive construct of DNI: equity. Equity is about the enjoyment of equal opportunities for all individuals, independently from their membership in different social and identity groups. Equity means that people have fair access to the organization, to opportunities for development, and to resources and power to thrive. Equity in the organization can defeat wider regimes of social inequality, for instance, generated by discriminating political power or labor or welfare institutions. For instance, think about the complete exclusion of white women, black men, and black women from jobs as public officials in the US before the 1964 Civil Rights Act. What instead generates inequality in organizations? First, exploitation. That is, when people are excluded from the distribution of benefits of the created added value. Second, opportunity hoarding. That is, the privileged access to resources, networks, and positions for insiders. As an example, think about certain organizations that hire job candidates only based on the affiliation to certain elite universities. Third, resource pooling. That is the concentration of resources to privileged groups based on their power and status. Lastly, the adoption of, what other companies do. That is homologation and adaptation. So what is accepted in society is not questioned. So let me ask you a provocative question. Have you ever thought that your organization is not a neutral vessel, but might replicate the inequality regimes that are found in the society? To which extent does your daily job implicitly accept social inequality? In our research, we found that while many incubation programs are supposedly open to everybody, the applicants and selected entrepreneurs in incubation programs were mostly white males. Looking at selection criteria based on high tech STEM fields or temporary development of full time programs, is it possible that these programs implicitly selected only those who were already given specific opportunities in life? Could the people in these incubators, shareholders, managers, trainers, investors, or mentors, take action to restore the game of opportunities for people excluded and thus maybe invisible so far? In this regard, let me be even more provocative. How about introducing affirmative actions, such as quotas, for certain groups of entrepreneurs in incubation programs? We know that quotas are not a panacea. They might solve the problems of having groups more represented at entry levels, but not necessarily in the development in time. People might feel selected not because of the merits, but for other reasons, and people excluded from quotas might also feel reverse discriminated. However, quotas and affirmative actions can really help us introducing diversity in organizational contexts where otherwise everything would look very homogeneous and stratified. By having more diverse organizations, you will have more learning opportunities, more diversified networks, and indeed contribute to address wider social justice in entrepreneurial ecosystems. At the end of this class, I would like you to reason about the strategic value of diversity, equity, and inclusion for your organization. It can be instrumental. D&I can bring resources contributing to solving problems. For instance, having diverse applicants for job positions or high quality participants in incubation programs. It can also be strategic from a normative point of view. DNI can allow you to anticipate or even to respond to legal requirements, but also to cultural and social pressures from stakeholders who are really increasingly interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion characteristics. And this places you as a compliant or a more responsible organization. However, let me remind you that developing a strategic approach with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't come immediately, but it requires three main important actions. First, understanding what is the real value of diversity, equity, and inclusion for your core business, and also walk the talk. Do not use D&I rhetorically, but practice it. Second, activating multi level and multi stakeholder strategic design and implementation processes. Involve the organization at any level, at employees, at managers and leaders, and involve members outside the organization, such as customers and suppliers. Third, systematize the objectives, the expected results, and establish indicators for monitoring and evaluating diversity and inclusion activities. This is necessary to be accountable. There are nowadays many organizations who publicly failed because they were not up to the D&I challenge. I hope this short class will push you to consider the relevance of D&I in your daily activities and push it as deeply embedded in the mission of your organization, also in light of the increasingly relevant initiatives connected to this domain, such as the ESGs, the SDGs, or the growth of benefit corporations or diversity charters.